which he didn't deserve. None of this was his fault. I began to have sleep paralysis and night terrors. I wasn't going to blame my mom. She was dying. So since I was a little boy, since I was even a kid, I've grown up in the church. I've only missed church maybe a handful of times through my life. I've gone Sundays, Wednesdays, been involved in youth ministries, been involved even when I was a kid in a lot of volunteer stuff. And now, even a few years ago, I've been involved really heavily in ministry work even before being at the gathering. And so even through that time, I learned quickly that that doesn't mean that I'm saved. So at an early age, I experienced some traumatic things happen. I was molested at age 8, at age 6. Me and a friend at the time were involved in some homosexual practice, which was of course innocent, but the enemy doesn't play fair there. He does not care your age. And I learned that even at those two ages, 6 and 8 years old, he wanted to do whatever he could to get me off track and off of what the Lord had planned for my life. And so following that, a lot of things happened. A lot of things happened in my life that I could really not be here right now from. It's a miracle, and it's the grace of God that I'm sitting here right now, because the enemy had so many attacks planned on my life that I succumbed to, and yes, I came into agreement with some of them, but it was like everything came at me. It felt like the whole world was coming after me at one point in my life, and it started after I was molested and those sexual things happened. At about age 9, 10, my dad was dragged down our driveway by his truck. He almost died then. Not long after that, he had a stroke. He had heart surgery. Not long after that, my mom had heart surgery. And right after that, she had her colon rupture right before Christmas and ended up almost dying. She flatlined for 2 minutes in the hospital, 1 or 2 minutes. And so that whole point in my life was very traumatic, because seeing my parents go through that type of thing was very hard. Following things that I had experienced that I had never told them, I was holding all this baggage, and I just became numb. I just went numb, and I had no idea what to do. I mean, I was young. I was 12 maybe, and anxiety and depression quickly entered in. I developed an eating disorder. I lost like 30 something pounds in the span of a couple months. It was not good, and so I was seeking something to fill that void that I felt. And after all of these things happened, I grew an anger towards the Lord, which he didn't deserve. None of this was his fault, but I had somebody I needed to blame for it. And so I blamed God, because I wasn't going to blame my mom. She was dying. I wasn't going to blame my dad because he almost died, so I became numb, like I said, and I began to pursue the things of the world pretty quickly. And so a friend introduced me to pornography, and I began to watch porn all the time and masturbate like every day for years. From the span of like 11 to 17, I was involved in a pretty heavy addiction in that. And that was what really opened that door to that realm. And so I began to seek things of the world. I began to party. I began to fight a lot. I began to do drugs, vape, smoke, all these things through the next few years. But I also began to experience a lot of suicidal tension. And I tried to kill myself with a gun to my head in my parents' bedroom one time. Like, I pulled the trigger and the gun didn't go off. And that made me so angry towards the Lord. I just remember the feeling I had sitting there crying, not because I tried to kill myself, but because I didn't die. Another time I tried to drown myself in our bathtub and I woke up. Like, things like this, I look back and I'm like, Lord, obviously he had a plan for my life. But that also entered into even more of the addiction. And so, like I said, I was running with this stuff. I was walking in this addiction. And at the same time, I was going to church Sundays and Wednesdays, even involved in some ministry, and basically acting like a saint, but putting on a mask the rest of the week and being like hell. I was walking like hell and with hell the rest of the week. And so even the addictions and stuff, even though that stuff was pretty rough, the big thing came up when I began to have sleep paralysis and night terrors. And so I'm not quite sure when that started. I think it was around age 15 or 14, but it started after me and a buddy and a couple other people were under the influence of things and started messing with a Ouija board. We thought it was just a game you got at Target and just played with. It's rated like ages 10 and up. So we were like, what is this? It's not going to be real. But we experienced very demonic things after that. So following that time, I began to grow an interest in the demonic realm. Nobody had ever taught me what that was or about it. I just watched movies about it, read about it, and was like, this is interesting. And so I began to play around and kind of push the lines of the demonic things that I had experienced. And so even with sleep paralysis, it was terrifying, don't get me wrong, but then I grew that interest. And so I began to talk to the demons, communicate with them. And that quickly grew a very not good desire to pursue the demonic realm over everything else. And so while I was still walking in addiction, I began to, like I said, speak to these demons, become friends with them, even sleep with them at night. You name it, I was doing it with these demons. So I was practicing necromancy. And so I quickly found out that it wasn't just spiritual, it became physical. I was seeing demons physically in my house all the time, following me, walking with me, spending time with me. One night, my sister woke up from sleep screaming because a demon had touched her. And I knew right away that was because me in the other room, I was talking to them. And so this was a very real world that I had no grid for because nobody had ever taught me that. And so that was until I ran into Apostle Minor in the ministry that I'm involved in now. And so I went there one day. I went to the ministry. He was a youth pastor at another church at the time. And I went in the first night. At that time, of course, I was still in a dark place. And I could immediately feel a difference in the atmosphere than any other church I'd been a part of. And I thought it was credited to him. I'm like, who is this dude? But of course, I learned quickly that it was the Holy Spirit behind him. And I have never in my life experienced that Holy Spirit. Like before this time, I'd never experienced the Holy Spirit like that in any other church. And so I walk in and I just, begin to confess everything that was going on in my life. 2 weeks after I had gone for the first time, I was delivered. I was manifesting on the floor one night, convulsing, literally shaking, like eyes rolled back in my head, demons manifesting, it felt like they were pulling me apart. And I went through my first deliverance and experienced freedom there. Those demons were sent out of me. Of course, that was the first of many, but I had never experienced freedom in my life. And it was so beautiful because I didn't know I could be set free from something so dark. And so go forward a few months, I ended up giving my life to Christ and being baptized. Even though I grew up in the church, I thought I was saved, but I was not. And I'd even been baptized at 8 years old, but I realized that wasn't necessarily real, and it was just because of who was around me. And so I rededicated or confessed my life to Christ and was baptized, and my entire life changed. So from age 17 forwards, I've been walking through deliverances and things that I didn't know I could be set free from. I've been set free from demonic things, the occult, even though I've encountered really heavy pushback from that. Like right after I was baptized, the enemy and the demons were very obviously upset and very angry that I had separated from that, and they had a mark on my life. I would wake up a couple nights being physically attacked and tormented. One night hanging from a noose and waking up with red and purple marks around my neck. Another night crying blood. Like these things were happening physically, not just spiritually, but they were being in the physical. And so I was set free from those things, and I pursued the things of Christ, and I found that freedom from that. And the beautiful thing now is that 3 years past this, at age 20 now, I can't look back and I cannot recognize the person I was. I don't know who that person is because the Lord has completely delivered me from everything in that past. And now I get to see time and time again people delivered from the same things, if not things that are worse and have more of a chokehold on them. And I get to see them experience the same exact freedom. And it is beautiful. It is so real. And that's why I want to give my testimony, is because people need to understand that they can be set free from even the darkest things that they've experienced. If I can be set free from literal occult practice and every addiction you can think of, then I know other people can be set free from that as well. And so, like I said, I have been set free. I'm walking in freedom and walking in unconditional love for Christ and of Christ. And being set free from that and walking now, I'm a completely different person. And that is why I'm a recovering Baptist.